Hello. I want to make this video to explain what this channel is about and why I'm making it. First of all, a little about me. I have a background in computer science and economics, but if I'm being honest, my interest has always leaned much more towards economics than coding. Coding for me is just a useful tool that allows me to build things. It is a bit of a chore, but it gets things done. But the thing I actually find interesting is economics. Incentives, markets, trade-offs, why people behave the way they do, how systems interact, and how outcomes can come from a huge number of small individual decisions. For a long time, I have played games that sort of touched on parts of that. Games like city builders, management games, strategy games, and so on. Many of them were excellent games, but none of them really gave me the exact experience I was looking for. I always wanted to play an economy sim, but I never really found a game that scratched that itch for me, where markets were sensible and adhered to economic principles, speculation and bubbles exist, information is scarce and profitable, competition for that information is intense, where the player would have to make choices without having the full picture. A lot of games that include stocks or markets treat them as basically random. You click a button and the number goes up or down, maybe you make money, maybe you lose money. That doesn't interest me very much. Then it's not really a market, it's just a slot machine with a nicer interface. Or, on the other hand, many games treat markets like vending machines with infinite supplies, where there is no fundamental limit to how much you can have of something. What interests me is more in the middle, not totally random, but not something so simple that it can be solved immediately either. A system that has logic behind it, but is complex enough that no one person can fully grasp it at once. That's the kind of game I want to build. The rough idea right now is a simulated city where companies would produce goods, workers would need jobs, people would need housing, resources would need to move around, and governments would make policies. Businesses would compete and some would grow, others would fail. Price would rise and fall depending on what is actually happening in the world. And instead of directly controlling the whole city like in a normal city builder, the player would be more of an observer, trying to make money by understanding what is happening before anyone else does, and using that information asymmetry to secure a profit. So if there's going to be a shortage somewhere, or a company is overpriced, or transportation is breaking down, or housing is becoming unaffordable, the opportunity would come from noticing that and then acting on it. I think that is much more interesting than just clicking obvious upgrades or reading one spreadsheet cell and pressing buy. I have tried different tools, different engines, and different approaches, but the ones I have settled on were Python and Pygame. I know this is not the normal choice for the game industry, but it works for me, so I'm going to continue to use it until it stops working for me. I also want to be upfront that I will be using AI heavily during the development, but I promise the game will not be AI slop. I'm not going to pretend like I'm some sort of elite programmer writing every line manually. I will be using AI tools a lot, directing them closely, reviewing what they do, and I promise that every line will be reviewed before the game is published. I do think this will become a more common approach anyways, but I would still rather be honest about it. Part of the reason for this channel is to document the process, part of it is accountability, part of it is to get some feedback from people who are interested in these kinds of systems and games, and part of it is that I think trying something ambitious publicly is more interesting than quietly abandoning it in private. I don't know if this game will become something genuinely good, something very niche, or if it turns out to be too ambitious for my capabilities and I would have to give up on it or hand it to someone else. All of those are possible, but I think it's still worth trying. I do believe that I'm capable of creating it. This is not my first game or coding project by far, but it's surely my most ambitious one. If that sounds interesting to you, feel free to follow along.